doing right, what would that amount to for you?
Oh, it's simple. Local, it's legislation, and national, it's reparations. Everyone is calling for our mayor to resign. But when I talk to him and when he sees this video, I'm going to be very clear in saying that we don't want him to quit his job. We want him to do his job. That means locally here as the mayor, he fires those officers. He puts pressure on our attorney general to make sure he charges those officers. But nationally, he is the president of the United States Conference of Mayors. His leadership is overseeing 85% of our country's population. And we need him to use that leadership to influence the federal government to pay cash payments to the American descendants of slavery for 250 years of slavery, but also of 100 years of Jim Crow, where we were not only locked down, but locked out of wealth in this country that we built.
Jecorey Arthur, thank you for speaking to us today.
Peace, peace. What's going on, family? It's your brother Naheem in the building, BKA Lord Abba, AKA Mr. Just the Facts. Tonight we have a powerful, powerful lineup. We got the brother Jecorey Arthur out of Louisville, Kentucky, the dopest beard in politics in the building. We got the BTP team in the building. My brother Josh, my brother Logic, my brother Ali. I think I just seen him pop in. Oh, there you go. My brother Ali is in the building. Shout out to my bro. After we get finished building with our brother Jecorey, we're going to bring in brother Joseph Evans, who was on the conference with Professor Cosby. I can't remember the name of the conference, so somebody correct me. And, you know, we reached out to the brother so that he could come on and have a discussion with us. Brother Jecorey, you're welcome to stay if you're not constrained by any time restraints. Or constraints, I should say. So we just going to jump right into this thing. Brother Jecorey, unmute yourself. Tell the people a little bit about yourself. Oh, before you do that, everybody, hit the like button. Hit the like button. That puts our video into YouTube's algorithm. Help us grow the channel. If you would like to donate, if you can, of course, use the super chat. If you could also send donations to our Cash App, which handle is Be the Power. Cash App Be the Power. And support the channel in any which way you can. Share the video. And sharing this video is also supporting BTP. So without further ado, I would like for our brother Jecorey to come in, introduce himself, tell us a little bit about himself, his origin story, his rise to politics, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Peace, love, and justice to everyone. Shout out to our ADOS family across the country. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to talking and just figuring out this moment that we're in right now, not only locally where I'm at in Louisville, but just all across the United States of America. We're probably seeing the most important racial uprising that we've seen in history, where all 50 states are involved in some sort of protest and people are listening in ways they've never listened before. But for me and personally, who I am, I'm Jecorey, born, raised, and still proudly living in the west end of Louisville. That's the highest concentration of Black people in the state of Kentucky and really in this region that touches Indiana and Ohio as well. I'm also known as Corey to my 13 siblings, which I'm the oldest of between my mother and my father. I'm known as Dada to my 3-year-old. I'm known as Mr. Arthur to countless of students across really the world, but specifically here in Louisville, teaching in our public school system, community centers, boys and girls clubs, libraries, anywhere there's youth. Also known as Professor Arthur at Simmons College of Kentucky, which many of you should be familiar with because that's one of the presenters of our inaugural ADOS conference. I teach in the music department, and then we're also working on opening an ADOS center where I'll be helping direct and lead our movement there through the higher education collegiate lens. I'm also known as 1200. I'm a performing artist and a composer, recording artist who makes hip hop music and classical music. My degrees are actually in music education, my bachelor's and my master's. And as of January 2021, I'll be known as Councilman Arthur. I'm the youngest councilman in Louisville history, and I will be representing District 4, which is quite literally the most powerful district in the entire state of Kentucky, because our business district is in the middle of this region, and it powers our tax dollars, and the business and the economic impact powers the rest of the state of Kentucky, since Louisville's the most populated city in this state. And this district, even though it's the most powerful, it's also the most problematic, because we have the highest concentration of homelessness, we have the highest concentration of poverty, the Ninth Street divide, which is really just the wealth gap, the racial wealth gap divide, is right in the middle of this district. It's also the most starved. We don't even have a full service grocery store. And I would definitely say it's the most dangerous. All of the crime is concentrated here. So I have a tall order, but I'm a tall brother, and I look forward to figuring out all of these problems and bringing forth some solutions, not only on a local scale, but also on a national scale, and working with people across this country to make it happen.
Definitely. Brothers, y'all jump in with the questions. I'm gonna try to figure out what's going on with the stream. Some people on the YouTube stream is saying that it's buffering pretty bad. So y'all jump in with the questions.
All right. Yeah, go ahead, brother Logic. Go ahead.
Oh no, yeah. So I watched you earlier on, brother Jecorey, yeah, Councilman Elect. And I don't know if you're familiar with our program, but this program is called Be the Power. And I really wanted to get you on this program because we believe that you really kind of embody that kind of a message. You know what I mean? And I mean that by people who have courage enough to jump in that race. You sacrifice a lot when you get into a public service and things of that nature. So can you speak real quick about like what kind of motivated you, like in your heart of hearts, to say, you know, I know like we got good people out here. Anybody can run. What made you say, I'm going to do it?
I'm 28, and I've been spending the last, 10 plus years primarily teaching, but of course making music and intersecting with organizing. And I've always taught and performed about our issues, whether that's the wealth gap, whether that's homelessness, whether that's unemployment, incarceration. I've always been talking about and teaching about these issues, but it wasn't until the ADOS conference that I realized the importance of becoming politically engaged. And I, at first, just wanted to get it politically engaged as a lobbyist and figuring out what we can do to address laws and advocate for certain laws at the local level to push us forward. But when this seat became open, I realized that instead of just advocating for the laws, I can actually write the laws. So I jumped into the race, and I couldn't in good conscience live in this district, which, as I talked about, the concentration of homelessness and poverty and unemployment and whatnot, that is really magnified in the neighborhood that I live in, because I'm in the west end of Louisville. I'm on the black side of that issue. I'm on the downside of that issue. I'm in a neighborhood that has a poverty rate of 52.7%. Over half of the people in our neighborhood are living in poverty. So what that means for me is I can't go to schools and teach about music or teach about the Black plight and not do anything about it besides just getting people to talk about it, to advocate for whatever policy. So I decided I'm going to make sure I'm on the fighting end of that, the front side of that, and making sure that I'm writing those policies, and beyond just writing the policies, because what a lot of people think about legislators, they don't understand from that ADOS perspective. As an ADOS legislator, you have to realize that sometimes it's less about writing the laws and more about writing the laws, if you know what I mean, the difference between that W and that R, because so many of these laws we have lived under that were written to wrong us, to exclude us, to destroy us. So I'm not only here to write the laws, I'm here to write the laws and make them right for us instead of wronging us, because they've been wronging us for centuries, as we all know.
Yo, that's powerful, brother. Powerful. And that's so amazing. So this is exactly what we're talking about when we say something like we've been fighting the power a long time. It's time to, let's not fight the power, let's be the power. That brother says something very profound about, instead of, trying to write the laws, he gonna go in there and write the laws. I love that. That is a powerful, powerful Powerful statement right there. And that's something that we've been echoing about, getting people to try to do this. And we just want to show examples of its possibilities. This brother is the youngest statesman in his history in his locality there. So I think that is a powerful example of the possibilities if we just use our political imaginations and have the courage to get out there and do it. So I yield back to one of the brothers. Y'all can ask him a question.
Yeah, brother Ali.
Yeah. Peace, brother Jecorey. How's everything, man?
Peace, Ali. You
Can
got
you
my
hear me?
favorite name, by the way. You know, like Muhammad Ali is from the city. I'm from his neighborhood, Parkland. I was born there 50 years after he was. He was born in 42. I was born in 92. So peace to you.
Peace, fam. So yeah, I was looking at your website, right? And I noticed, a bunch of things in terms of your platform that you were running on. You mentioned that, you'd like to create like more high-paying jobs in the neighborhood, to kind of address the racial wealth gap. Tell us about the kinds of jobs that are there now and the kind of jobs that you're looking to create specifically to address the wealth gap.
Well, most of the people in the black end, the west end of town are working in service industry jobs, which we know the jobs that are in person, very much so essential workers during our pandemic. And we also know that these jobs are largely, in our case, going to disappear by 2030, but that's probably moved up. The McKinsey report showed that we would have significant black job loss in 2030 because of automation, because of computers and technology. And what's interesting about that locally is that Microsoft is forming a partnership with Louisville. And from what I can understand with that partnership, Louisville was attractive because we would have the least amount of resistance. And I think back to a historian named George C. Wright, who said in the 80s that Black Louisvillians, ex-slaves, were almost passive in making sure that they were obedient to their masters, no matter whether they had the chains on or not. So as you fast forward to 2020, we're still in that same boat. We're still in that same exact situation because no one's talking about the Microsoft partnership. In fact, we are utilized as almost a hub for that Microsoft partnership without realizing that some of that partnership means you getting replaced at your job. Some of that partnership means 2030, when we have black jobs being annihilated across the country, you now became the headquarters of where that's really going to start, because we have this tech company coming in to take over our industries. So when it comes to high paying jobs, I'm really thinking about not only this moment, but also the future. I'm thinking about making sure that we have adequate technology education, not only for our youth who are always getting that, but also for our elders. We had to do request absentee ballots from a website. But when you live in my neighborhood and 60% of the households don't have the internet, how are you supposed to request a ballot to vote absentee? And if you're an elder, you're probably afraid to go to that one polling location that we have in the city that's across town, and you already don't have a car. But there are so many blockades in place. So I'm thinking about not only something that's going to get you a high-paying job, but something that's going to make sure it contributes to society in a meaningful way, such as tech, such as making sure we capitalize on the fact that Louisville has the highest concentration of people working with aging populations in terms of our healthcare. Humana is located here. What percentage of those jobs belong to ADOS citizens? So I'm in a neat position because I've worked across the entire city, not only in the predominantly black neighborhoods, but in the predominantly white neighborhoods on the far east end of town. And I see what success can look like. And I'm also not naive enough to know that that success is only limited to what we can do here locally, because we can't fix the racial wealth gap locally unless we fix it nationally. There's too steep of a wealth gap. There's too wide of a gap. There's really an abyss that we can't solve by just giving you a job to improve your income. We have to give you wealth and something for your generations to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. So at the same time that I'm trying to negotiate these deals to bring jobs and companies to the west end of Louisville, I'm also sending reparations proposals and packages to people running for state and federal positions. I'm working on something with Tone and Yvette to send to Joe Biden's campaign. I'm working on federal advocacy to make what I do here locally a lot easier. And I often think of the school system. If I do my job in an elementary school setting, your job as a middle school teacher is going to be easier. And your job as a high school teacher is going to be a hell of a lot easier. So I'm trying to work from the top down and from the bottom up to address that wealth gap. So it's, of course, jobs, but it's also reparations. It's also wealth building. It's also programs and packages and protections to make sure that we are addressing long-term transformative policy, because income is just transactional to a certain extent.
Indeed. So let me ask you this, because I noticed that in the area there are a number of Walmarts, right, in the Louisville area. How are those institutions affecting Black employment? And are they helping at all?
We actually had a Walmart that was interested in coming to the West End, and that deal got pulled. But to understand the reality of full service grocery stores, or even a Walmart or a Target, for me and for anybody in the West End, I have to go to a different state to go to Walmart. And if you remember from the conference, Southern Indiana is right across the river. The downtown Louisville touches the Ohio River. Right across that river is Southern Indiana. The closest Walmart and Target for me are across the river in a different state. Not even on the opposite end of town. And that's crazy.
So when I was looking, it looked like there are a bunch of Walmarts in the area. So that's kind of weird.
Not in the West End, not in the West End. So we have two full service grocery stores. One is a Kroger, the other is a Kroger. And I would say those stores in themselves are problematic just because they have less organic produce. They actually shut those stores down in the midst of our protests about a month and a half ago because they were afraid of people looting. So when you shut down one of the two Black full service grocery stores, what does that mean for a community of 60, 70,000 people who really only had that store to go to? Otherwise, we just got a bunch of Family Dollars and Dollar Generals on every other corner, a bunch of liquor stores on every other corner, a bunch of pawn shops and gas stations on every other corner, which you all know we don't own most of those. Our mom and pop shops got destroyed post integration, or will I really say desegregation?
Yes.
Yeah, so Jecorey, I wanted to say, man, congratulations on your victory. Way to be the power. And, you know, I'm just elated to see that, you know, you made that move and you took action on it, because I believe that it's going to influence the next wave, or it's going to influence somebody else. I don't know how many, but it's going to influence other people in other cities to say, you know what, I can do that. You know, that's the move. And so what I wanted to ask you, I was talking to I was listening to another city councilman from another city in Louisiana last year. And he was really breaking down some things to me that I didn't understand about how you could, you know, make some things shake as far as being city councilman. I know that like over half of all the Black businesses in the whole state of Kentucky are in Louisville. So what are some things that maybe you were looking at to help Black businesses out in Louisville?
Hold on, I got the ambulance driving past. So it's crazy you asked that, because yesterday I was livid at an initiative that got announced that's supposed to be for Black businesses. We see the bait and switch happen all over the country, but it happens in Louisville in ways that I can't believe our Black community is not more in tune with what's going on and what's happening. You all know that we are the stage right now for racial injustice and police terrorism because of Breona Taylor being killed back in March. Then the National Guard came and killed David McAtee. Louisville is shouting Black Lives Matter. Everybody, red, brown, black, yellow, and everybody in between. our mayor and his administration yesterday had a press conference to announce an equity task force. Now, just based on everything that's happening, the context of Louisville, Kentucky right now, as far as racial injustice goes towards ADOS, and them creating this equity task force, what do you think, and what do our brothers and sisters listening, what do you think that task force was supposed to be? It was for black businesses. What do you think it was supposed to do?
Supposed to be all contracts going include the money, the table, have more extra access, right?
That's exactly what it was supposed to be. And if it was 2021 and I was a part of those conversations already, that's what it would have been, specifically for ADOS. But after sharing at this press conference that black businesses in Louisville, there were only 2.4% of the businesses are black. After sharing at this press conference that the Brookings Institute, black people have 10 times less wealth, which is really like 10 times less wealth because he didn't account for the depreciating assets. After having black people speak at this press conference about our plight, he hit us with a Black Lives Matter problem and gave us an All Lives Matter solution. And by that, I mean, it went from here are the black stats, here are the black surrogates to talk about all the black issues. This policy is an MFDE policy. Does anyone in the chat, does anyone on this call know what MFDE stands for? That stands for minority, female, disabled enterprises. Let me say that one more time, because when I heard the press conference, I was livid, and it took everything in me not to call the mayor right then and there. And I've been talking to him frequently. He knows all about ADOS. He knows about ADOS. He's advocating for reparations. He's talking to Sheila Jackson Lee. We're trying to get HR 40 changed, and he had the audacity to address black problems with All Lives Matter solutions, with an MFDE, minorities, females, disabled enterprises. Now, I have to say this because I'm under fire constantly because I'm standing firmly on the ADOS square. I have to say this. I'm not saying that minorities, females, and disabled enterprises should not have access to business contracts. I'm not saying they shouldn't be treated fairly. I'm not saying that whatsoever. What I'm saying is females, white females, Indian females, Hispanic females, disabled white men, and every other group that's non-ADOS didn't go through Jim Crow. You didn't go through chattel slavery. You weren't treated like an outsider or 3/5 of a human in the city of Louisville. So why are you now reaping the benefits of those policies? Dr. Cosby says this all the time, and I echo it. We got special mistreatment, so we need to get special treatment. And they failed yesterday in the city of Louisville. Mayor Greg Fisher's administration failed when he introduced this policy. That's not an equity task force for black people. That's for everybody. And the question becomes, well, how much of that is going to be carved out for ADOS? So to answer your question about what I'm going to do for black businesses is I'm going to actually help black businesses. I'm not going to say I'm helping black businesses and then say also I'm helping black and brown. Also, I'm helping minority-owned, women-owned. Scratch all of that. Right. If you broke us, you need to fix us. And if we were impacted by policies to keep us from having loans in business, to keep us from having loans in homes, to keep us unemployed, to keep us incarcerated, then we need to have reverse policies. And as I said, not just writing the laws, but writing the laws. We need to have that mindset when we're trying to fix it. And I didn't mean to go off on a tangent, but I was pissed when I saw this happen in my city. And I'm not on council to do anything about it besides just, kind of bark from the corner.
No, that was excellent, bro. I'm glad you brought that, because that's something that's extremely relevant to the moment as far as black business. I wanted, and that kind of rolled right into my next question that I wanted to ask. And that is, with Breona Taylor, that brought a whole lot of attention to Louisville. And I'm glad it brought attention because it shows, it's added attention to the issues that we face as far as the disparity between police treatment, but more importantly, wealth. And then that brings the conversation to reparations, because we know that this treatment is tied to being a bottom caste. In your opinion, how do you see Black Lives Matter as far as a movement, or how it's being used or portrayed, or I don't want to use the word weaponized, but how do you see them in terms of being an asset or being a liability in what you're doing in Louisville, and is there any room to make them, if they're a liability, is it any room for them to become an asset?
I can't speak for Black Lives Matter as a national entity. I haven't worked with them, talked with them, been in the same spaces as them, but our local chapter has done some groundbreaking work in terms of policy and advocacy specifically for Black folk. They're not perfect, and we have plenty of fundamental disagreements, but they are willing to work and willing to listen and willing to be a part of the ADOS mindset and philosophy. I can say that talking with the core leader on an almost weekly basis. Now, what I said, I think it was like an NBC X Youth spinoff show, was about people who are looking at Black Lives Matter almost as just a slogan. It's like more of a slogan than it is of some substance. And I said that if you're in the streets talking and saying Black Lives Matter, but you're not talking about reparations, then you're all bark and no bite. Because it's not enough for you to just yell about police. I think Tone said it, that police is just one layer of a baked cake of oppression. Like, you not realizing that police isn't necessarily the issue, it's more about poverty. In Louisville alone, there's over 1,100 police officers in our Metro Police Department. Over 1,100, 1,157 to be exact. 12 of them live in the West End neighborhoods or the West End zip codes. Over a third of them aren't even from this county. They're from surrounding counties known as Oldham County, Spencer County, Bullitt County, counties that are 90% plus white, and some are in southern Indiana. So you have white police officers, mostly male. LMPD, I think, is over 67% white male. You have white males driving to the Black community to really just perpetuate and continue what they were created to do. Our police department was started 2 centuries ago in the 1820s to patrol slaves, to regulate, to maintain slaves. And now, 2 centuries later, in the 2020s, they're doing exactly what they were created to do. Breonna Taylor is direct lineage. She's ADOS from the ADOS sisters who were being killed and tortured and lynched 2 centuries ago in the 1820s. So they're really doing what they were created to do. And what I need Black Lives Matter locally and also nationally and every Black Lives Matter chapter to really stand on is that you barking about police terrorism is not the end all be all of our movement. We can't let that be the end of it. We can't talk about defunding the police, because what happened was the bait and switch in other communities, just like I said with the Equity Task Force. The communities that have defunded the police, do you think they paying the folks that got killed by the cops and lynched by the cops centuries ago? No, they give it to Black and brown communities. They give it to minority communities. They give it to communities in the most despair. They don't give it to the ADOS communities. So I need Black Lives Matter to stand firmly on that and to be Black Lives Matter, not Black plus insert any other group Lives Matter. Because that's slowly what we're seeing it turn into, and that's problematic. And it's very problematic because it's confusing a whole lot of white folk. A whole lot of white folk are giving grants and giving donations and contributions left and right. I don't care if it's $10,000 or $1.2 million that Simmons just got, which I'm so grateful for. That's not reparations. That's some atonement to help us get through this time, and that's a nice little Band-Aid, but we need full-blown surgery. We need a full-blown facelift in Black America and ADOS America. And that means not only you donating to somebody's GoFundMe of the week or giving a percent to Black business. That's cute and that's fine. But I don't just need you marching in the streets with me. I need you marching in your living room, your dining room, your bedroom with your white family members every holiday and advocating for reparations. That's what I need you to do. I don't need you marching in the streets with us, which is nice, as I said, but we don't need that. And it's sowing a whole lot of confusion with white folk and really all other quote unquote allies when they see a movement that isn't focused. And there's a whole lot of fuzziness and lack of focus going on with the current movement and the current racial uprising.
I have some questions based on your experience as a school teacher. I was doing some research into Kentucky, into Louisville. This is from Census Poverty in Louisville. This article was published in 2017. The whole headline reads, Census, Poverty in Louisville declined in 2016 to pre-recession's levels. And I want to come from this element, and then I'm going to leave with my question. Let me see. It says it spoke about a rebound of local jobs and how the joblessness rate fell. And of course, this is all pre-COVID, so I can only imagine how things are now and how they'll be probably over the next year or two. But this is the point that I wanted to read, the part of it I wanted to read. It says, but poverty remains closely tied to education levels. In Louisville, 30% of people without a high school degree lived in poverty last year, up from 25% 8 years before, while 14% of high school graduates were impoverished. And across Kentucky, 33% of people who don't finish high school fell under the poverty line last year, as did 17% of those with the high school diploma, but no college credits or further education. Now, they didn't disaggregate this data, so I don't know if it is all of Louisville, Kentucky, but I mean, we can safely assume that if these numbers were disaggregated, the Black population would be higher. So my question to you is, as a teacher in the public school system, how did poverty affect the education of the children there? How did it affect their well-being, their drive, their desire, and how were you able to navigate that and help them to at least get to the next grades?
I could talk about this all night, but I'll make 3 points. And one kind of takes what you just said and throws it out the window in terms of the way that people look at education and wealth, because oftentimes we say that education is the equalizer. And I was definitely the walking, talking token of shouting that when I was in schools for a couple of years, until I started to unpack and realize the more schools I went to, the more I realized, well, it's not really about education being the equalizer. And when I discovered ADOS, it was a wrap. Like, I would say ADOS radicalized me more than anything in my life. But let me just read. Our Urban League does a State of Black Louisville, and this is research from the 2018 State of Black Louisville. And our Federal Reserve contact said that Center Research, led by William Emmons and Brian Noeth, found between 1992 and 2013, college-educated whites saw their wealth soar by 86%, while college-educated blacks saw theirs plummet by 55%.
Wow.
Both black and white college graduates enjoyed wealth gains between 2013 and 2016, but the median black college graduate's wealth in 2016 remained below its 1992 level.
Wow.
I was born in 92, and when I was born, Black Louisville had a 21% poverty rate. I'm 28 now, almost 3 decades later. Black Louisville has a 35% poverty rate.
Wow.
And when you look at outside of Louisville, I know the state data, state average is about 30% for everyone going to college. Black college rates are 36%. So we're going to college, more than anybody else. Meanwhile, we're seeing poverty more than anybody else. Also, what people fail to realize about Black schools is that our schools are part of other Black institutions. They're a part of a web, an ecosystem of being ADOS, of being Black. Our schools are failing because our communities are failing. And I know this because in Jefferson County Public Schools, I have worked at the poorest of the poor schools with the highest Black percentages, and I've worked at the wealthier schools with the highest white percentages, and I see it with my own two eyes outside of the data. And I see it and I feel it. And it's crazy to think we exist in a city that, of course, like so many other southern cities, used to have Negro only, colored only schools. And if you look, and I'd be interested, I'll give everyone homework since I'm a teacher and a professor. I want your homework to be to figure out the bottom performing schools in your state and figure out the percentage of Black students in them, because I'll tell you mine. The bottom 5 schools in the state of Kentucky are Bick Elementary, 88% Black, Wheatley Elementary, 82% Black, King Elementary, 80% Black, Roosevelt Perry Elementary, 77% Black, Maupin Elementary, 87% Black. Every single one of these schools are in Louisville.
Crazy.
And every single one of these schools are in the west end of Louisville. And they're all over 3/4 Black. And the very lowest performing school is Maupin Elementary. And guess where Councilman Jecorey Arthur attended kindergarten and 3rd grade? I went to Maupin Elementary, the same school in the neighborhood that Muhammad Ali grew up in. They used to be Parkland Elementary. And it's the lowest performing school in the state of Kentucky. My little brother went there. I had to make a conscious decision to take him out of the school and transfer him to a white school on the opposite end of town, just so that his education could have better quality. Now, unfortunately, what I didn't know is that just because you take a Black face and put it in a white space does not mean you're going to fix race. You know, I rap, so I got to rhyme every now and then. So you take that Black face, put it in a white space, doesn't mean you fix race, because he still suffered from discrimination. White teachers looking at him, not realizing the issues that he carried and the baggage and the trauma that he carried into that school was impacting his work efficacy in that school. And that's so problematic. So it's less about the Black school itself and more about the Black community around that school, because the school that he got transferred to, Height Elementary, where I taught full-time, my first full-time teaching job right out the gate. I graduated on a Sunday with my master's. On Monday, started teaching at that school. The surrounding businesses, the surrounding churches, the families and the households were all able to support that school. The poverty rate out there is about 12%. The poverty rate in Parkland, where Maupin Elementary is over 45%. And that's the school that our kids have to go to. These bottom 5 schools, these low performing schools that are really working according to state standards as far as testing goes, are the lowest performing schools. Why are they all in Louisville? Why are they all in the Black community? Why are they all 3/4 Black? And the last point I'll make is that when desegregation occurred for us, nowadays Louisville is by far one of the most racially mixed and diverse schools, quote unquote. But what we don't know about that is we're only racially mixed and diverse because our kids in the Black community are being bused elsewhere. And when you have the bottom 5 schools in the West End, the kids on the other end of town aren't busing to get here. They aren't being shipped across town to come to our schools. We're being shipped across town to go to their schools. So it's quite the complexity to talk about education and poverty, because a lot of people don't want to touch the outside factors. And I know this after just getting off of a Zoom call last week with the government liaison of our Jefferson County public school system, who told me out of her mouth, a lot of teachers and administrators don't want to do anything outside of the school day. Like, they think that's not their responsibility. I mean, hell, even our superintendent thinks it's not his responsibility. We have something called disconnected youth in Louisville, which means we have, I think, 17,000 youth between ages 16 and 24 who aren't in college, who aren't in school, and who aren't working. We have the worst racial wealth gap in the country, 9% rate for whites, 26% rate for our black kids. So if you're black between the ages of 16 and 24, 1 in 4 of you are probably not in school, whether that's college or grade school, and you're not working. But our superintendent and our public school system doesn't think that's their problem. Not my fault, not my problem. But what they fail to realize is it is your fault. And unfortunately, it is your problem.
Facts. Facts. I have more questions, but I'm going to spread it around to my bros, Brother Logic. It looks like Brother Ali dropped off. But Brother Logic, if you had anything.
Yeah, can I comment on something that somebody said in the chat real quick?
Oh, sure.
I can't see the name, but they talked about our own schools and our own teachers and our own curriculum. And I was on a call earlier with somebody who wants to run for county clerk. And they talked about, they actually didn't know my relationship with Dr. Kevin Cosby and compared what I said to something that he said and was talking about self-segregation. What I need white people to realize, and I'll say this, and I would love to hear what you all think, it's not about self-segregation. I'm not advocating for self-segregation like some of you might. I'm advocating for self-sustain, meaning I don't want our schools to be the worst. I don't want our schools to be the worst in terms of achievement, in terms of outcomes. I want our schools to be sustainable. I want our schools to be attractive. And if you want to ship some white folk across town to come to our schools, great. I'm not necessarily about self-segregation as I am self-sustainability. And unfortunately, we're not sustainable where we are. We don't have schools that are achieving. And oddly enough, we have schools that are funded at a crazy different rate. I talked about Maupin earlier, and I talked about Height on the East End. There's a $5 million funding difference. But why is Maupin still at the bottom of the schools? Meanwhile, Height is in, I think, the top 50 of schools across the state. So I just wanted to comment on that before we moved on.
Wow. Before you go in, I just want to, I was at the conference and I was looking for a place to find my vegan food. And I was searching, I was trying to find a business owned by some brothers and sisters that served vegan food. And I don't know if I may have been looking past, because I think it was an hour break. And I mean, there was not one in the immediate area that I was able to pull up that served vegan food. So I had went both days while I was there. I can't remember the name of the spot. I know several of us met up. We didn't like intend on meeting up at a vegan spot. It was just other ADOS vegans. We had hashtag the vegan ADOS. We met up there and we ate. We had a good conversation. But while there, it struck me that, I just couldn't pull up. I didn't see even just Black-owned restaurants in general. And that could have just been, myopic oversight on my part. But I just didn't see much. Even driving around, I just didn't see much.
Man, we got to do a part 2. We got to, because I got to run like a little bit after 9:30. We got to do a part 2. There were 5 sit-in restaurants in the West End for the longest, as in like restaurants that you could actually go in and sit down in. We'll be lucky if we got one after COVID-19. We will be so lucky if we have one. I mean, these restaurants were already suffering because you're in a neighborhood that can't really afford to support you. And now I can't afford to leave my crib, let alone eat, because, I'm struggling to pay my bills. I'm vegetarian. I'm constantly ordering vegetarian organic food. We got Kroger click list, and I got to usually pull up to the Kroger across town to get mine because the grocery store here, if I try to get it delivered, I mean, one time I got like $150 worth of groceries and they replace it if they don't have it, or they substitute it, or they don't get it at all. They just take it off the order. Man, they came back. They didn't have anything organic. They had such a small amount of organic options that I went from a $150 bill to a $15 bill because that was all they had at our grocery store. Wow. Anyway, go on, because I go on forever, bro.
Yeah, man. Oh, wow. That's amazing. I'm so sitting back. I'm just so glad to have you on the show, because one thing that I would like to do, you explained a lot, and I think this is a classic show. and ultimately we would love to, other people to do what you've done, right? So a couple things I would like to ask you real quick before, I know you got to go. On your campaign and on running, trying to get to office, was voter registration a big part of your campaign strategy? We just want to try to what can others do to kind of get involved and kind of have a little leg up? Good, like Corey did it. How did Corey do it? Maybe I can do it like that. You know what I mean? In regard to new voters and engaging new voters, did it take a real concentrated effort to get at new voters and elect the younger and the voters and get into that population? Was there a element where a certain amount, with how hard was it to get the incumbent out of there? You know what I mean? Talk about some of that type of stuff real quick if you have the time, but really answer the question too of how important, if at all, was voter registration.
We got to do a part 3 and bring on all the ADOS candidates
That would be dope.
who ran and talk about their experiences. I think we still have one who's in the field, Tamara Johnson-Shealy, but out of the ADOS candidates, a few months ago, there was a graphic that floated around, and we had people in Baltimore, people in Ohio, people all over the country. I was the only one who won my race. I mean, I think I'm the first ADOS identifying politician ever. And I know I won't be the last, but we definitely got to do a part 3 and just talk about that experience, because I got ran through the mud over ADOS. but to get to the logistics of voting and like turnout and whatnot, I did the opposite of what a lot of people told me I should do. Of course, I talked about race. I talked about ADOS. I mean, if you look me up and you look up some of the earliest articles, the first articles where I announced I was running, I mentioned ADOS. I mentioned a reparations committee. I had my announcement at Simmons, and there was just a whole crazy scandal that when this non-disclosure agreement that I got on me lifts, I want to come back and talk to y'all about even more, give y'all the juice on that whole situation. But I was told not to talk about race. I was told to take the easy route by going to the voters who are like 5 out of 5 primaries, 3 out of 3 primaries, the people who have high affinity voting records. And I didn't do that because the people who have high affinity voting records aren't the people who need us the most. And I was quick to tell somebody, like, when I knock on people's doors and they say, "Oh, I'm gonna vote for you because you black." No, that's problematic. Because just because I look like you doesn't mean I will represent you and I'm for you and I live like you. And then also, not everybody who looks like you lives like you. I mean, there were black people in our race who just have never lived in the trenches where I live, have never experienced what I experience, have never experienced mass incarceration from a familial level where my father is a felon, my uncles and cousins and brothers are dealing with felony charges. Not everybody can fight that issue if they've never lived that experience. You know what I mean? Like, how are you supposed to fight poverty and you never had your lights or your water cut off, bro? And I never got to debate with the other candidates, and I'm so mad. But I digress. And I was in a situation where I was told to only talk to the high affinity voters. We went after the people who haven't voted in a while because it was important to activate them. It's important to activate them. If I knock on your door and you say you'll vote for me just because I'm black or just because I'm a Democrat or just because I knocked on your door, what I would often do is challenge them and say, no, actually, tell me what you want out of me being a politician. Tell me what I can do to serve you. Tell me what I can do to earn your vote. Because knocking on your door, being born black, and registering as a Democrat is not an agenda. It's not a political exchange. And that's what's kind of kept us for the past, 50 or so years voting predominantly Democrat at the bottom of a country that we built, because we treating politics like it's some sort of play, like it's a video game or like a pickup game on the basketball court. And that broke my heart, and I have so much work to do. And sometimes it put me at odds with our elders, and it put me at odds with people who consider themselves community leaders. But I'm okay with that. I think it's important for me to not only build bridges, but also throw bombs and realize that we got to throw bombs to rebuild some bridges or to just get rid of some bridges in general. So I did the exact opposite. I'd be interested to hear what some of the other ADOS candidates did on their candidacy. I'd be interested to just have a deep dive conversation about that, or even about the issues of running as an ADOS candidate, because we have so much smoke coming our way and people don't understand. They can't unpack ADOS. Like, I had to deal with that. And I'll also add that if I didn't have the reputation I had as a teacher and an organizer and a musician beforehand, I'm gonna keep it all the way 1,000 with you all. I would not have won this race. I didn't solely win because I stood on an ADOS square. I won because I established a reputation beforehand. People knew of me, and then I worked hard on that ADOS square. And I would say ADOS sharpened my sword. I already whipped the sword out, but it was like kind of dull. Y'all sharpened my sword, and y'all gave me a double edge. I had, what's the Darth Maul guy who had the two lightsabers? Y'all had me out there like that. Because at first I was just, you know what I mean? I had the dull lightsaber, but y'all took me to a whole new level. And it's important for our candidates to go to that level, to go to an ADOS level. I mean, we got people who don't even know the difference between just being black and being ADOS. So I'm dealing with that political education on this campaign, dealing with people saying I'm anti-immigrant in a district where I got immigrants and I got Latinx brothers and sisters who are hitting me up saying, what the hell is this? Why do you hate us? I'm dealing with that while talking about reparations, while also talking about being ADOS. And we got to prepare our candidates for that. They're not ready for it. I'll also add, and I'm going to say this and shut up. I also was better equipped to win my race out of everyone else on that ADOS endorsement flyer because it was such a small, local, focused race in a specific area of town. I look at someone like Tamara Johnson-Shealy, who's running for U.S. Senate, and she is the epitome of why it's hard for ADOS-centered politicians to run and win such big races, because when you unpack her contributions, her campaign contributions, there are 21 people in her race. Not only is she at the bottom in terms of fundraising, she's negative at the bottom. She's negative cash on hand. She raised $25,000. The top candidate in that race, I think Warnock, he raised over 11 million.
Yeah, he has a war chest.
That is the reality of being ADOS. That you got negative $800, $900 in your campaign account, and this bourgeoisie, Navy suit wearing, got all the endorsements from the black politicians who ain't never done nothing for black people, brother who's still ADOS, got over 11 million. Right. We can't win if we don't have wealth. We can't win if we don't have wealth. And as unfortunate as it was to see this racial uprising and my city being a stage for it, that pushed me into the light even more, because I've been talking about these black issues. I announced in December standing on an ADOS square, and then people told me to shut up. And then you fast forward to March, Breonna Taylor gets killed. We finally find out about it almost 2 months later. Now everybody want to talk about race. Everybody want to talk about racial justice, or should I say racial injustice. But we've been doing it. We've been talking about it. And when they talk about it, it's empty. It don't mean nothing. You just, like, we tearing down statues of Confederates and celebrating. And I say this over and over. I don't want to tear down symbols of white supremacy. I want to tear down systems of white supremacy. That's what we need to be focused on. We get too distracted. Way too distracted. I'm going to shut up.
Brother Jecorey, I have a question for you. I've noticed that people have been attempting to drag out Sister Brianna, right? Claiming that she's some kind of queen pin or whatever. You know, this is kind of par for the course when an unarmed black person gets murdered by the police. They have to destroy the character of the individual. But what information do you have with regard to Brianna and the type of person that she actually was, as opposed to the way they're trying to paint her at this point in time?
I'm gonna say something that I've never said publicly, and I want you all to take this literally and figuratively. when I think of Brianna on a personal level, and I didn't know Brianna, but when I read her story and I hear recordings of her voice and I unpack all of the reports that are happening around her situation, this is what I need to say, and it's simple, but it's profound. Brianna is my mama. My mama had me when she was 15 years old, and every man that my mother has been with, had a child with, including my father, have had to resort to selling dope. And when I was in middle school, just about to start middle school, someone broke into my mother's home where my little brother and my little sister and I lived. She was at work, we were at school. They broke into the home to take money from him, to take drugs from him, and he was shot in that exchange 5 times. And we had to move to a different part of town temporarily to get away from people looking for us. That is Adolph's life. And I say Brianna is my mama, one and the same, because what if my mother was home?
Right.
And she got shot and killed? What if I was home and I got shot and killed? What if my little brother or my little sister, what if they were home and they got shot and killed? What the media is doing to Brianna right now is basically saying that my mama deserved to get shot and killed because her boyfriend had to resort to selling dope, to put food on the table, to put food in my mouth, to put clothes on my back, to keep a roof over our heads. So every time I see a report that tries to criminalize her, I immediately take offense to it. Because you talking about my mama, you talking about LaShonda Arthur, you talking about my little bros, my little sister, you talking about my family, you talking about ADOS.
Hey, you spit right now, man.
And as I said, you can't fix police if you can't fix poverty. What people don't realize, if our neighborhoods are filled with poverty, our neighborhoods are going to be filled with desperation. They're going to be filled with crime, or like I like to rhyme and say, stealing, dealing, and killing. That's what our neighborhoods are going to be filled with if we don't have wealth. And if as long as they are filled with stealing, killing, and dealing, you're going to have police come from other parts of town to come over here and patrol you and to regulate you and maintain you, just like they did when they were created to regulate, patrol, and maintain slaves. Furthermore, I'll add, and ain't nobody else on Metro Council going to say this but me, why are you kicking in Breona Taylor's door over a couple bricks? You need to be going to UPS, which UPS is headquartered in Louisville. That's where all the dope is coming from. You need to be talking to the El Chapos. You need to be talking to the government that controls the plane, trains, and automobiles that allow the dope and the guns to come into our community. Because Brianna's not the plug. Jamarcus Glover, her ex-boyfriend, that ain't the plug. They are just dealing with a system that was designed not only to destroy us, but nowadays for us to destroy ourselves. So I can't wait to be on Metro Council because we got some work to do. And I don't know where our black caucus has been. I have no clue.
Let me just bring this.
He got me fired up. Hold on, Ali. Bro got me fired up right now.
Yo, straight up. I wish you was my councilman. I need a councilman like that. Come on now. Councilman Arthur, I need someone talking like that for me at my city council. I could just imagine the debates, and we all deserve a Councilman Arthur. You understand me? A Senator Arthur, a Representative Arthur, a Governor Arthur. We need that, and this is the beginnings. Brother Arthur is Brother Councilman Elect. Let me just call it like it. Councilman Elect,
right?
You know, has shown us the possibilities. It only takes one. It's a domino effect after that. You're not gonna. Now he is in a position to really fight for you. So he's not fighting the power. He has become the power. Now he has the ability to create some change. So we need to learn by that. Let that be a beacon light of hope. And now we are inspired. And look at the brother making it look cool. You making politics not look corny, brother. You making it look cool.
I told you when we started, he got the dopest bid in politics.
That's right.
Politics, you know what I mean? I want to see that effect go all the way up to Capitol Hill. I want to see somebody looking like and talking like Councilman Jecorey Arthur in the Senate and in the chambers. I need that energy, and I just want to salute you, brother. I know your time is short. If I don't get to ask you another direct question, I'm always following you, always sharing you. I wish you nothing but power and love, brother. Continue your fight and doing your thing, and appreciate you for coming on to our show and honoring us with your words and wisdom, brother. Peace, family.
Definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
I want you to go in, Ali. My brother Elijah gets us fired up all the time, especially around running and politics. I had to get him fired up a couple of times not too long ago about running, but brother Jecorey has come on and definitely fanned that flame, man. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, man, look, when I was looking at the Brianna situation, and before we did the show, I was looking up because the issues that's dealing with Louisville are not isolated to Louisville. So when we look at like redlining, I saw that there's a serious history with redlining in Louisville, and gentrification. That's always going to be the case. And I was reading some months back that there was some type of, I don't want to say conspiracy, but it was I don't even want to speculate, but all I want to say is there was a thought that what the police did had something to do with housing or gentrification or moving them out of it. Could you just speak to that, the legacy of redlining, how it still applies today, gentrification and housing when it comes to ADOS in Louisville?
If you're like familiar with Harlan Bartholomew, could you just drop like a hand up in the chat or something? If you're familiar with Harlan Bartholomew, anybody, somebody? Harlan Bartholomew was the father of redlining, and he spent years in Louisville perfecting this craft, and went on to produce, I think, 350 city plans across the country in some of our largest cities. And the fact that Louisville has that history, the fact that we're still very much so segregated and concentrated to a specific area, is very much so tied to Breonna Taylor's death. This street known as Elliott Avenue, which is about 5, 6, 7 blocks away from where I'm at right now in the west end of Louisville, is mostly owned by our city's government, our city's housing authority, our land bank. And the trap house that they called it, that they didn't find any drugs or guns inside of when they performed a no-knock warrant on it, was being occupied by Jamarcus Glover, Brianna's ex-boyfriend. And it was, it was hit the same night that her apartment was. So you have these handful of homes, one of which the city was trying to acquire and get the ownership to. And you have Brianna's home, where she was unfortunately killed in the midst of what anybody would have responded with. I mean, I got my 3-year-old here. If somebody kicking my door after midnight, I'm shooting too. Straight up. I know anybody would protect their family, protect theirs, protect themselves.
Right.
So Kenneth Walker, which I'm gonna add, we're allowed to give like certificates of achievement for people who risked their lives and did. When I take office, I'm giving Kenneth Walker a city plaque. And I know they're gonna hate me for that, but I'm giving him a city plaque. He deserves that. He put his life on the line to protect this girl who got killed in the midst of that. But he's been just ran through it by so many folks. So anyway, her home was on that list. One of those homes was very much so a target of being purchased by our city. And when the story broke that her lawyers were now accusing of that killing of being tied up in a gentrification, my first response was to go straight to the top. So I text Mayor Greg Fisher and said, like, what's the validity of this being the case? Like, what happened? And we actually talked on the phone. and he denied it. But after we hung up, I walked on the block, I looked at the house, and something dawned on me. There were hundreds of millions of natives and black enslaved ADOS people who were killed for land. Hundreds of millions. So why would they spare Breonna Taylor's life? And that's that.
Bro. In New York City, we have what's called a civilian complaint review board, right? Where, you know, it's empowered. It's an independent agency, but it's empowered to receive and investigate and even make findings and recommendations on complaints against police officers in New York City. In your plan, I see that you have something very similar that you would like to implement in your city. Can you speak about that and tell us what the function and the purpose of that particular review board would be, the community review board would be in your city?
Well, oddly enough, I would say probably I got 50 points on my website. Maybe 15 have actually been started or implemented since I announced. Very much so, because I'm out here loud and proud about these issues and these solutions. But our civilian review board here locally doesn't have any substance to it because they don't have subpoena power because of state laws and because of police contracts at the state level.
Right.
So what I have to balance, not only in Louisville, is something that I have to figure out. How do I communicate and work with our state senators and legislators and representatives to change the laws at the state level to impact what I want to do here locally? And the issue that I'm running into is our state House, state Senate is predominantly white men in rural county and town Kentucky who don't know what we're going through here, and in many cases don't care about what we're going through here. So what I would like to see happen, and this is going way outside of that specific policy question here locally, what I like to not only see happen, but make happen is forming coalitions that go across race, go across town, city, whatever the case may be, to get people in those podunk towns on the far east end of Kentucky, west end of Kentucky, to have a conversation about what's going on here, what we need you to advocate for where you are, see if there's any similarities of what we could fight for politically at the state level so that we can do what we need to do here. And it's crazy that you bring that up, because we just had our state GOP criticizing all the Democrats in Louisville for not getting the city under control, and our city kind of letting our downtown be boarded up. They called it a ghost town. Our city kind of just, they called the protesters rioters. I mean, they went in on Democratic leadership here in Louisville, but they didn't provide any solutions. And on top of them not providing solutions, they block solutions at the state level anytime we try to implement it, such as our civilian review board not having subpoena power, such as not being able to fire officers involved in shootings unless they have a felony, or us not being able to fire them when they're involved in an ongoing investigation, such as us not having rent control because the state caters more towards landlords instead of tenants. Like, the state is blocking so much, but they're quick to criticize us when we messing up their money, when our downtown Louisville, the economic driver for the state, is messing up that money. But what they don't realize is the first ADOS politician just got elected. So I'm about to keep messing that money up, and I'm about to make sure they hear what we're trying to say and know what we're trying to do, so that we can pass statewide legislation to fix local issues. And I will definitely hold downtown hostage until we make that happen. And I'm not afraid to have that target on my back.
My brother.
Thank you, brother. I'm glad you came through. We got another guest that we want to bring on, but before you leave, honors, you definitely have me fired up and ready to run. I'm actually ready to move back to New York City and see if I can run for a city councilman seat up there. And one of those career politician unopposed seats that just keep repeating every election cycle after election cycle. But thank you, brother, for coming on. Yeah, we definitely need to do a part 2. We had actually extended an invitation to Sister Tamara Shirley Johnson, but it was right as she was getting on the road, so she said she wouldn't be able to make it. So, but definitely, brother, definitely. Anybody else that's
we have some other things in common, fam. We it's a couple of us are musicians up here as well, you know.
Oh, yeah. I got some bars myself as well. So, you know, we gonna link up. We're gonna do some ADOS stuff in the very near future.
Yeah. Put some stuff together, man. You know what I mean?
I'm with it. I appreciate y'all, and I wish y'all all the best. Everybody in the chat, I wish y'all the best. Support this network, this outlet. What is it? Cash App $?
Be the power.
Be the power. Please support it. Like, we need ADOS Media badly. Unapologetic, unfiltered, unedited ADOS Media. So keep doing what you all do, and I look forward to coming back. Let's bring the other candidates on and inspire some new ones.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you, bro.
All right, peace.
All right, peace, brother. All right, we're gonna bring our brother Joseph Evans on. You know, this brother, very sharp, intellectual brother. He was on the conference with Dr. Cosby, Yvette Carnell, Antonio Moore. He's the dean of Morehouse School of Religion, author of the book Reconciliation and Reparations, and he's a preacher of economic justice. You know, we were taking some issues with certain things he was saying during that Zoom conference they had. So we thought that it would be good to reach out to the brother and, you know, just have a conversation with him about reparations and who should be included in reparations, et cetera, et cetera. But before I let the brother introduce himself, I have a lot of people saying that they are having problems with the YouTube feed. I'm putting my link to my Facebook page and my Twitter handle in the stream. In the chat section, the comment section, the live chat. So you can watch it on the Facebook page or on my Twitter page if you are one of the people that's having a problem. Some people are saying that the stream is fine. Some people are saying that it's blinking in and out. Even one of our mods had to leave, and she's now watching from the from the Facebook page. Shout out ADOS North. So, brother Joseph Evans, please introduce yourself, your works, and we'll get into the rest of this discussion.
Your mic is muted, family.
Yeah, I don't know if he can hear us, but if you can hear us, brother Joseph, just unmute your mic and then just come in. So we're gonna hold some type of dialogue until you do that, brother. You know, brother.
It should just be a button on your left that says mute.
Yeah, brother Jecorey really got me ready to run.
Right. That's what he was saying was so powerful. I'm glad we had him on so people could to get that. But that's just a prime example of what we be talking about with, you know, getting the game. I say it every program. Government is the game and politics is how it's played. And we got that's an MVP right there. That brother was powerful. We all good to go, brother Evan?
We can hear you, but we can't see you now.
Yes, sir.
You have your camera blocked out. If you can hit the button to there you go. There you go.
Brothers, there you go. Good to see you.
Same here, brother.
Thank you for the invitation to come on this very important discussion you were having. And I learned a lot listening to Jecorey. I was hoping he would stay just for a few minutes. I spent a lot of time in Louisville. And a lot of what he was talking about, I was well aware of. Now, that was years before, frankly, he was probably not being, he might have been born when I was there, but I was there a long time ago, but have a lot of ties to Louisville. I'm not going to take up a lot of time. I was trying to tell Brother Logic, and Brother Logic, thank you for thinking about me, all of you thinking about me. Yes, unfortunately for me, I had a dental implant today. And so I'm not as strong as I want to be. And so that's why I was telling you I wasn't going to try to talk too long, but I wanted to keep my commitments because you all invited me on. So to Naheem, to Logic, to Josh, and to Ali, and to the ADOS family and others who will be listening tonight. If I may, I'm just going to sort of use some words and then we're going to fill in the blanks. That's the best way for me. I was writing down some things here that I think are important for any discussion. The first one is just reparations, right? I would say that reparations is the number one issue of the 21st century, period, right? What we have to do, in my view, is to talk about reparations, but we can't talk about it with 20th century language. And we can't talk about it from Western civilization or European constructs. We cannot do it, because we have to create our own narrative. That's one thing I wanted to get on the table. Another thing that I wrote down is globalization. That's something that I'm concerned about, globalization. So as you can imagine, a person such as myself, you said I was a dean of Morehouse School of Religion. I don't usually talk about educational background at this stage of my life because, you know, in many ways, my education today is irrelevant. It's outdated because most of my education was in the 20th century and it also was from a European model, right? So I had to go and learn how to unlearn what I learned, right? But just for the sake of it, I do hold a BBA in history and government and a minor in economics. I do have a master's divinity in systematics, which we call systematic theology. And I do have a PhD in homiletics, or the art and science of putting together a sermon. And I am a retired Army officer. I spent 7 years active duty and almost 21 years in the reserve components, and I've been downrange a couple of times. So I've seen the world. I'm concerned about globalization and its effect on what ADOS and others are trying to achieve. So you're not going to get an argument from me is ADOS's agenda right? ADOS's agenda is right. You're not going to get an argument from me is ADOS making tremendous gains. I know you are because I'm watching. As a matter of fact, I was watching so much, I was invited, I don't know what year it was probably 2019, I think. I went to Louisville. The last conference you had in Louisville, I was there. And I spoke the day before for my friend, Dr. Kevin Cosby. He and I went to school together. And so he and I don't agree on everything. You don't expect that. But we agree on enough things to where we know we're on the same team and the same fight. And he's one of the brilliant brothers I've ever seen in my life, to be honest. Wealth gap. I heard that a lot tonight. And I was really impressed with Jecorey and his details about Louisville. Louisville, in many ways, has replaced, let me put it this way. Louisville right now, in my view, is a center for organizing the reparations demands and certainly in this country. It used to be Nashville. Nashville in 1901, I think, was the first reparations demand. There's a sister named Callie House. She was an ex-slave and she sued for reparations. And I think that's the first one on record in the United States. And so Nashville for a long time was the center of that intellectual capacity. But I think it's Louisville and then out to the brothers and sisters from other spaces. Lastly, and I'll be really interested to hear what everyone has to say. In my view, and I would have said this to Jecorey when you get him on again, ask him to talk about it. One of the opponents that we have is a black people, and you want to, and you added ADOS people, is the political system that we work in, or the political system that we fight and demand in. It's like a box. It's like neoconservatives, neoliberals, and both, whether you, and to be honest with you, there's only a small difference in my view and my experience between Republicans and Democrats. Very small, right? The two parties, and how can a country with 330 million people only have two major political parties? I mean, that's already a crime to me. But they work inside of a box, and they work to see who's going to fight for corporate dollars and corporate support, right? I'll give you an example. I think it's Capital One commercials. We have black faces talking about what's in your wallet, right? Well, that's corporate money that the majority of us cannot get to. So this country's been corporatized, if that's a word, to where it's very hard to pull that web apart. Neoliberals and neoconservatives, nothing gets in the box. And so again, going back to what I said originally, I think we need a new language to demand reparations, whether it is ADOS locally or ADOS nationally, however you want to look at it. But that's something that I'm very concerned about. And so that's, I think you introduced a book that I had written called Reconciliation and Reparation. I focused on narrative. In other words, I wanted to know, how do we tell our story? Right.
Well, if you don't mind, can I kind of jump in for a second? I know you said quite a lot there. I don't want to miss something.
Sure.
In the outstart, you read but can you read that first part? You was reading from something. You was speaking about reparations. You said something about global. I don't want to misquote you. Can you read that part one more time?
No, I said one of the things that I'm concerned about, I said the 21st century, the number one issue of the 21st century, in my view, is reparations. I think everybody agrees with that on this call and others. The question is, how do we achieve it? And then the second thing I said, Brother Logic, is that I just wrote down words. And one of the things I'm concerned about is globalism, because the white countries have formed an alliance, frankly, against us. I really see it that way. I think that's where we are.
Again, so when you say us, who do you mean when you say us? But and more in particular,
I'm talking. Well, in this case, I'm talking about ADOS. You're the target.
Okay,
right?
So the global. I just want to understand some things. So I need a lot.
I'm trying to explain.
I got to ask some questions for framing. So questions kind of help us frame the things, right, to get some clarity.
Sure.
So we're talking about an American problem,
right?
We're talking about a specific group of Americans who have a specific plight against a specific entity, the United States of government, right? For specific atrocities. Unless you got some, like, I don't know where you're going with the global aspect, but I don't know where the global aspect fits in to what we're doing here as far as reparations. So some of the things that I heard you talking about, some of the global concerns in that conference we seen you talking about.
Right.
And for some reason, correct me if I'm wrong, what I was getting out of your message that on that conference was that America kind of has to be this world advocate, or American descendants of slavery have to champion the world and put the world on our back in order to speak about reparations in America. And if and then to me, it seems as though we know that the Americans who existed at the beginning of the formation of the Republic have received. We're a small percentage of the country, first and foremost, right? And we have received so much damage and harm here, specifically So for us to have to champion everybody else's justice claim in order to talk about ours, or to fight for ours, or to demand some specificity about our story, that is the only way to tell this narrative. I don't, when you say you're concerned of the narrative, I think that's what you're kind of talking about, offending other groups.
Yeah, let me get back in there, Logic, and I can help you with that. So on the first hand, I do understand and do agree that, I don't know who said the other night, I was on this thing, I don't know how long ago it was. I'm not asking ADOS to be a champion for people in other places, because that's not your responsibility in my view. What I was trying to suggest is that you and I, if we say that we're ADOS, and we are, I know my heritage, I know where my family comes from. I am an African descendant of slavery. I know exactly where my family comes from. We were fortunate to be able to do that. So I got all that. What I'm saying is, America is not our sole enemy for Black people in America to get its reparations.
So you think like maybe we should go at the Ashanti Kingdom or the Benin or something like that for reparations?
I don't know if that's the case. What I'm trying to say, let me try again this way. When you and I try to demand reparations from the United States government, right? Because that's who did slavery. I mean, and at the end of the day, they sanctioned slavery. They sanctioned Jim Crow. To be honest with you, we were talking about Brianna. They sanctioned somebody going in the house and killing that sister. It is sanctioned by the government of the United States. Let's be clear. We know who that is. What I'm trying to add to what we're talking about is the United States government is also a global corporation. And we have to at least be aware of that. That's all I'm trying to, that's what I've been trying to say for 2 days, counting tonight. I'm not telling you that what you're doing is wrong. I'm saying that we have to be aware that we are not just fighting the United States government anymore. We're fighting a global tentacle machine that hates the thought that you have the audacity, and I have the audacity to say you owe us something. So that's what we are. Why now, I don't have the answers, Logic, to what I'm saying.
I know. I got you. I'm just saying. You just made me think of another question though. Now, so why would these global actors, in your estimate, skip over all Africa and everywhere else and put so much focus on these? There's billions and billions of Black folks everywhere all over the globe. What makes it so special about these 32 million in America that gets all this global focus?
Because we have more power.
What we have?
Yeah, well, we do. I mean, when you think about just Black people, right? Your ADOS is more organized as a reparations movement right now than any reparations movement in the world. Contradict me if you can.
Look, I don't. Let me just jump in real quick. I don't know that. I don't know.
I agree.
I don't know. I do not know. I haven't looked at CARICOM, for instance. I don't know their structure. I know about them, right? I don't know how they do what they do. But when I cannot look at Nigeria or Liberia or any of the nations in Africa who are their own government,
right,
and then look at my oppressed people here and make a comparable statement as you just made. I can't do that.
What I said. No, Naeem, let me say this, because I that is not what I said. That's the opposite of what I said. I said that African descendants of slavery.
American descendants of slavery.
Yeah, American descendants.
I'm sorry, we talk about Africans, yeah. American descendants of slavery. Thank you, Josh. I'm saying that you're not responsible for people in other places. We're not. That's not our charge. What I'm saying is that we have to be mindful that there is a corporate world that is looking at what we're doing, and they will do what they can to keep us from getting it. To me, people think that America is just this independent nation, and it's not. It is tied to European interests across the world. And so when we get our reparations, right, think about in this instance, we're going to also be getting money from other countries who have invested into this United States government. We're not
That's
just
possible.
getting money from. Oh yeah,
That's
definitely
possible.
so. No,
Mhm.
that's real. That's dope. That's real talk. So I'm not. I didn't come on here tonight with answers. I didn't come on a couple of weeks ago with answers. I have more questions than I have answers. I'm going to rely on young minds like I heard tonight to solve those issues because I'm not sure I can, but I have enough experience to know what I'm looking at. But I'm not going to tell another group of young people with brilliant minds what you can or cannot achieve. I'm not doing that.
Okay, so
Respect.
so we got some beautiful and blessed people in our midst in this era of justice fighting, and they have some pretty awesome answers. So those of us with the answers, we have to be put out front and let the people with the answers answer the questions and address the solutions and the problems that face us today. So we have some very powerful people out here promoting and advocating and educating about some very powerful solutions. These are powerful solutions on the horizon that are being talked about. And we talking about narratives. We have to have understanding. If we don't have that coalition tight and on code, we're going to be counterproductive. So we have to understand that in this specific moment this is the fight for our ancestors, right? This is the fight of all fights. You understand? Because it was our actual family who was being killed and slain under the domestic terrorism. It wasn't the rest of the world. It was ours. That's my mama, my grandmama, your grandmama, and all of them. That's what we fighting for. So in their lineage, in their birthright, that's what this reparation is about. Because they didn't have
good narrative too. That's a good story.
These are the birthrights that we're fighting for.
That's
so
a
this
good
narrative that I'm talking about, and that's why only a specific people can do it and talk about it the way it needs to be talked about and fought for, because that's our blood that we're fighting for. So that's my message about that. So that's why we got to be very specific with what kind of a reparations program is constructed, who can qualify to be the beneficiaries or get access to such a program and project. And we have to be very mindful of the way we talk about it in the public. So I knew you as an educated man. You was on that platform and you had that conversation there. And I wanted to bring you on our platform because, like we were telling the brother Jecorey, our platform here is about teaching people and empowering people with an educational program that can help them become the power where they're at. So when we know that reparations, like you said, is the biggest issue in the 21st century, reparations has been the biggest issue since 1776. And when they tricked us into being slaves in the first place, and we did a program a while back on that a couple of days ago. But we must understand reparations has always been the most important issue since 1865 to 1965. Now we've always been fighting for what we did not get.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Those are our birthright, everything of that nature. So that's the narrative that when I hear the word narrative, that's what I hope that's what I'm hearing.
And that's a good thing, because all I'm saying is from experience is when you state that narrative so clearly, that narrative has to be up and down collectively, because when the tempter comes to try to get into this, because I'm telling you, you're being successful. I'm watching it, and I'm watching. And I know that as you continue to grow and get more candidates, for example, I was very thrilled to hear that you know what, if you'd have told me in my day, when I was in Louisville in school, that you would have a young man, 28 years old, with that kind of worldview, right? And he's run and won. No, man, that would have never happened in my day. But it was because of organization, and it was because of a clear message. He would risk losing to win because he wasn't going to compromise who he is. That's what we need. And we don't need it just in Louisville.
I just want to say real quick, brother, real quick. We are, because I'm hearing what you're saying, and we give credit first to the ADOS movement for helping bring us up to speed. So I want to take the time out to give a shout out to Sister Yvette Carnell and Brother
He's dope.
Antonio Moore, first
Too
and
dope.
foremost. And you know, with their knowledge, they have helped elevate us to where we're at right now, having this discussion with you by reading Dr. Sandy Darrity's book, From Here to Equality, that he co-authored with Sister Kirsten Mullen, and watching several of his videos and interviews in the media. We have become more well-rounded in this particular information, in this particular space. So that would be my suggestion to all who are trying to learn about ADOS. There's a website, ADOS101.com as well, that, you know, it helps. It helps us gain a greater understanding of the direction of where we're trying to go, and a narrative that we could all, like a script, basically, that we could all read from, because we are all on the same page. We're all on the same page. So I just wanted to interject with that.
Yeah, I'm reading that Economist now, Brother Naeem, and he's a brilliant. He's brilliant. And what I like, but let me say this. I studied economics. I don't even remember a whole lot of it, but I know I studied it. But here's what I want to say. Numbers and theory are basically the same, right? I mean, 2 + 2 is 4 in whatever language. But it's how people present that to other people. That's how they get advantage, right? So the economist that you're talking about, he is talking to us in a whole different way about how this thing works. That's opening our eyes to realities that we have not been able to get a hold of because we've been hoodwinked by the other people who are not telling the truth. That's what I mean by narrative. It's how you tell the story. So now we have somebody who's telling the story that's radicalizing a new generation and giving us revival to get this done. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm depending on you to get it done. I'm going to call you out like that. I am. I'm tired of, I've been doing this a long time.
Understood.
And I'm tired of people mistreating us. Man, you don't want me talking, man. I can talk about, I know. I can go to Charlottesville, Virginia, Earlysville, Virginia right now. I can tell you where my family's from. I can tell you about why I'm light-skinned. I can tell you who raped my great-great-grandma. I can talk.
Can I just give you a light-skinned cosign on that?
Come on with it, Doc.
I wrote down on the last show my lineage. I showed where my light skinnedness came from.
Wait, man, wait. You didn't just say a light-skinned cosign.
Hey, man, hey, look, it's real ADOS story.
That's
man.
a fact.
That's
a fact.
Hey, like they said, how the Irish became white. Well, how the Irish interjected themselves into my lineage to create light-skinnedness. How about that?
Yeah, bro, I feel you, because like I said, you know, I've been interested. I was radicalized in the 1990s toward reparations, and it was like an apple fell out of my tree, out of a tree, hit me in the head, because I said, this ain't working. I keep trying to find space in a space that's not my space. This ain't for me. This is a lie, right? Now, most folk that I know are glad you've arrived.
Okay.
This gonna be good. You gotta stay in the fight. Now, yeah. Look, let me just say this and I'll leave it alone. So I wrote this book. The first book I wrote, it was called it was on double consciousness. And I argued that I didn't argue specifically about what ADOS is trying to achieve, but I would say this: if you have a double consciousness and you do not know who you are, then you can't you can't be radicalized by ADOS because you can't get that vibe. You're going to be thinking about what white people say as opposed to what you should do. Right. So that's what I did on the first piece. The second piece, I went to back to Charlottesville. There was 200. Charlottesville, the University of Virginia was going to expand its university cemetery because they wanted to bury some of their major donors in that cemetery. So on the north side of the cemetery, they had all these bulldozers and whatnot. And when they started going down in the dirt, they stopped the dig immediately because these archaeologists were on the scene and they realized the different colors of the dirt. They knew what had happened. They had literally dug up folks' graves. And when they found out it was 267 slaves buried on the north side of that cemetery that had built the University of Virginia with their own hands. And they just dumped them in the graves, unmarked graves. Just when they died, they just died in there and they just put them in there. So I took on the University of Virginia. I said, University of Virginia, you got to find the African descendants of these slaves, and you owe them big money. And they did a few things, but they didn't do what they really should have done. And then I ended up taking on Duke University. And then I got on University of North Carolina and Wake Forest. And then I got all the way up to Brown and Yale. And that's why we start having all these, what they call them. They call them some kind of reconciliation commissions, but they ain't coming up with no money. They putting people's names on bills. We don't need no names on no bills. We need money. That's what the young man was talking about, the wealth gap. I wrote that down. So all I'm talking about is how do we get to what we need, which is reparations. So when I left that cemetery that day, I went out there and went to the cemetery and looked at it. And I left and I went back up the road to where my family's cemetery is. And I said to them, I said, thank you for at least having the power, the dignity to bury our people with their names on their little stones. Because them brothers down the street I just left, they ain't got a name. See, that's the kind of things that I want to inject into the story, because we got to continue to put pressure on people to do the right thing. And, you know, if I were like 20 years younger, I'd say, just take it. I don't know how you do that. See, one of the things Jecorey was saying was he wanted to write laws, but he wanted to write law. I thought that was profound, because that's what we got to do. We got to write law, right? We got to figure out how to change this system, because the way it's set up, neoliberalism and neoconservatism, I don't know how we're supposed to, I don't even want to deal with that anymore. So I'm depending on you. Look, you said I was a smart guy. I don't know about that. I used to think I was a smart guy. I ain't sure about that no more. I'm just a black man in America trying to figure out how to get liberation for black people who live in this country. And it's going to take,
look, we understand.
It's going to take
that,
people
brother.
like you. I can't do it. It's going to take people like you.
And we understand that. And
Shit.
I try to meet people where they are, because everybody comes from a point of ignorance at some point. I know I have come from many points of ignorance over the years, right? And ignorance isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just means that you're not fully aware of something. And what we need, there's a term that we have coined here at Be the Power insofar as our fight for reparations, and that's reparationists. And in the same way we had abolitionists back in the Reconstruction era, we need reparationists today. And this is why I would say that education that you would get from the ADOS movement and that you would get from Dr. Darity, whether it's through his book that he co-authored with Kirsten Mullen, or one of his many YouTube videos, interviews, etc., that you can find on YouTube. that's what we need right now. So, I mean, with your background and with your education, and I know sometimes it's hard to come out of, you know, something that you were into and move into another space. Sometimes, you know, you're Pan-African, and then you hear this ADOS thing, and sometimes a little bit of that stuff still lingers on. I know. If there's one person that knows, I'm that person. But this is what our educational faculties are for in the first place. So all we need is more reparationists.
Mhm.
I understand the plight of our people fighting global white supremacy. But at the end of the day, I don't know if there's a plight that's similar to ours, because a lot of those, like I said earlier, a lot of those countries are their own governments. They're their own governments. We are under a government that is filled with bigots. I like to say that the government is blank. It is an inject yourself and inject your ideology type of government. And this is what political representation is for. So if you elect bigots, then bigots are going to create bigoted policies. If you elect freedom fighters are going to create freedom fighting policies. So here in the United States of America, we have to centralize our focus on what we need to do here in the United States of America. And then we can become, I guess using Ronald Reagan's term, that light, that shining light on the hill for the rest of the people in the diaspora, and say, well, look at what they did over there. So now we don't need to fight anymore. We just need, if you're ADOS, and you already said you are an American descendant of slavery, we need you in the fight. We'll provide the footwork, you provide the wisdom. We'll hit the ground running. You just sit in the back and say, look, I've taken in this information, and, you know, and you got prior education. I believe that if you do it this way, if you do it that way, and then brothers like us, we can consider and make any proper adjustments if needed, because we've made several adjustments since we started broadcasting from this channel based on what the advice of elders who have hit us up and said, you know, this is not, I'm like, okay. And we've made those adjustments. So yeah, we need you, brother. We need all the reparationists that we can get. We need all of America's descendants of slavery fighting this fight, young and old. And I ain't calling you old, I'm just saying young and old.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate what you said, and I agree with you. Let me just say this. I'm probably learn more now than what I teach. I listen to what people have to say. I remember when I was like Jecorey, I used to have a lot to say. I listen more now because, can I say it like this, brothers? I know a lot of people in the chat, but, you know, we're all talking. If you in the fight, at some point, you gonna get wounded in the fight, right? You in there fighting. You know, I've been fighting for a long time. So at least I think I have. You need reinforcements. You need people who are going to come and pick up the banner and keep fighting until we win. I mean, that's the ultimate, is to win. Righteousness for our people, right? That's my view. So I'm not in a place where I have to have all the answers, because I generally don't. I was listening to Jecorey. You know, he and my son are about the same age. I learn a lot from my son. If I don't know something, I go ask him, and he'll tell me, right? And I just listen to what he's talking about so I can get his vibe, and then we move on together. Right now, I am, to be honest with you, I am already Dr. Darity. I have his book, and I'm working through it. And I mean, he's not new to me. I know who he is. He is, that's a bad cat, man. That's what I was talking about. He's talking some real science, and he's putting it in a way, like I said, He's taking the power away from people who have been controlling the narrative.
Mhm.
He's saying, no,
Mhm.
that ain't really how economics works. So he's telling us, no, this is how economics work, and this is what needs to be done. That's good. And so I'm with that. And really, I have not really heard anything that I don't agree with. I was orientated years ago to a different sect of reparationists, but I don't fight people who know something I don't know. I don't care if I'm wrong. I only care that we win.
There we go.
That's
Hey, we
what
need
I'm
to get
talking
more
about.
people in that headspace right there.
That's right.
I don't care I don't care about that. It's not about me. It's about the people who have come before us and the people who are going to come after us. That's what I believe our obligation is as a people. I do. I'm with you. Don't get me wrong. Just cause I heard, I do have different, but I'm not against in any way. I hope you're right. I'll be glad to. You know what? They right. I'm good. I'm right with them because I'm going to do what I can. That's all.
I appreciate that statement, man. Because it's not really about being, holding strong to some ideology or a way of thinking that we had. It's about winning. We were talking about a similar analogy. Some people want to score touchdowns and some people want to win the game. And of course, BTP reparationists, ADOS at large, we want to win the game. We're not so much concerned about the ideological end to it, because how we got here was a development and seeing the failures of certain ideology and being what is the word? Ideology? I can't think of the word, but being rigid in ideology that we don't make progress and we kind of miss certain things. So I guess one of the elephants in the room is. And I don't even know if it's elephant in the room. I would say, do you think that I'm going to ask you two questions? Do you think that people are resistant to come out of, I don't want to say come out of Pan-Africanism, but to embrace the fact that ADOS as a movement or as a way of viewing things is the way to move forward as far as reparations claim, because we're so used to that. People are so kind of ingrained in it, in the Pan-Africanism part of it, that they refuse to let it go as far as an ideology. And then two, do you think that there's certain people who will want to maintain that Pan-Africanist ideology so much that they're willing to just kind of give up on reparations and just kind of go through the motions and speak, they say they're for it, but then when it comes down to taking actions that may damage the reparations claim, they're willing to do that because they don't believe it's going to happen anyway?
Well, that's a very good question, and maybe the elephant in the room. So I have been identified as a Pan-Africanist, and I am a Pan-Africanist, but I am not opposed to ADOS because you could be right. I don't care about me being right. I'm only what I am because that's where I've started and that's what I've invested myself in. But I have always looked at ADOS as an alternative because we need to win. As Naheem has said, but I'm willing to let go of any earthly ideology to achieve the ultimate goal. Now, I don't think, as I think I was asked earlier, I don't think that American descendants of slavery has to carry the water for the world. I don't believe that. That was never what I was trying to say. What I was trying to say is that because ADOS, in my opinion, is really making some noise toward getting this done. The closer we get to getting it done, the more we realize that the United States government is not sovereign just to the United States. It's a corporation. And think about how much we're in debt, for example, the country's in debt, right? trillions and trillions of dollars because all these other countries have bought our debt. That's how this country works. That's why we're so militaristic. We do all this military fighting to people because we borrow money from people and we don't pay it back. And if they get upset about it, we drop bombs on them.
Doctor, I have to interrupt you there. We are also about having, we have to be right and exact when we on Be the Power.
Say that again.
And so we have to be right and exact with our information and things that we put out on Be the Power. We kind of pride ourselves on making those in real time corrections. So when you say about this debt, America does not borrow foreign currency. It borrows in its own currency, right? And when we talk about the debt, well, the American debt, we have to understand that 36% of that debt is in what is called debt, right? It's not really debt, and I'll explain that in a second. But what is being called debt is that for all of America, 36.5% or so of that is tied up in American programs like Medicaid, Medicare. It's tied up in our own programs. Another 30% is owned by wealthy people in America. They've been allowed to buy up some of the currency that was not collected in taxation, and they get it turned into treasury bonds so it can mature. So it's like turning yellow dollars into green dollars and green dollars into yellow dollars. So, and when those treasury bonds mature, they'll just get turned back into liquid. But what we want people to understand, who may be uneasy about the economics of reparations, is that when we get into deficit and debt, you have to understand they don't mean the same thing they mean when you're talking about you going into debt or your state going into debt. Because your state and your city and in the budgeting you do at the kitchen table, none of you all are currency creators, right? We're all currency users. But the United States government is the sole sovereign creator of its own currency. Our money's not tied into any limited commodities, and our funding capability doesn't come by borrowing foreign currency. We are in a unique position that only few people around the world are in. So we don't have those constraints to where our debt, we have the ability to match our debt ceiling or raise it to accommodate whatever the economy needs. But what we have been experiencing is that, people who think about U.S. fiscal operations the same way they think about it as a business's ability to fund and a state's ability to fund. And they just think about it in a different way. The biggest difference is understanding that we're currency users and they're the currency creator, and they can't go into debt in that way. On previous shows, we talk about what some of the former chairs of the Fed have discussed about how its funding capacity and its fiscal operations work. Bernanke, Greenspan. There is no what we get wrong is trying to get Congress to come up with this thing called a balanced budget, when the goal should be a balanced economy, and whatever you do with your funding tools creates a balanced economy. We know that when the government deficit is running high, there's a surplus in the private sector. So we know there's a lot of things that can be set at ease with just understanding the nature of the economics. You talked about the narrative for reparations. We need to understand that the economic narrative needs to be on code as well, because people get into that doomsday, America's broke, which is an impossibility. America cannot go broke, because that's like saying that the scorekeeper at a basketball game can run out of points to give to any of the team. What people need to realize and come to the realization is the real assets are the work, the labor, the food, the land, and we're not experiencing any type of real resource shortages. So the doom and gloom of superinflation and the doom and gloom of we're going to run out of money and we're running up all this debt. These things have been contrived to twist voters into pretzel knots, trying to get votes out of them. What the top wealthy people and the top percent and the corporations that you just talked about, they don't want the public to know that the government has an infinite capability of funding whatever programs that they need. What they don't want us to do is create an economy that works for the people and keep an economy that works for the few, right? And the rich. That's one of the things that we are battling right now. So they know good and well that they don't need to tax or borrow to fund any program. They don't need to come up with the money. We do not fund the government. We don't fund Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam puts and spends his money into the economy so we can earn it and give it back, right? So we can do the actual work. So once we know that Uncle Sam don't have to go get this money from nowhere, people can relieve the anxiety thinking that Uncle Sam's going to take it from them, because that's what people think when we talk about reparations. Somebody's going to take something from little old me. And that's what people say, oh, we're going to have to pay. I'm not paying to the reparations program.
That's right.
Here in the 1930s, we didn't own no slaves. We ain't asking none of y'all to pay nothing. This is an invoice that has to be filed with the United States government, specifically the United States Congress. That's why we're not talking about no little city local reparations claims, because it gets in the way. These are stumbling blocks. And the local cities don't have the capacity to close the racial wealth gap because of what I just explained. They're not currency creators. They're currency users. So if they were even going to attempt to address such an undertaking, they would have to first tax or borrow to get the money to do it. So we are skipping that. It's a stumbling block, but it's an unnecessary one, because we know that their funding capacity is limited and tied up in a way that's a waste of time. So we have to go straight to the boss. We need to go to the federal government, who does not have those taxing or borrowing constraints tied to the way that they fund things. They are the sovereign, money-producing, currency-creating entity that legally can print American money. So we don't have no problems financially. What we need is the votes, and then Congress will get the money.
So can I get back in there?
Oh, yeah.
I agree with most of what you say. And maybe when you're on a program like this and you're trying to speak, I'm not going to be able to get all of it. So I don't think I'm going to take some liberty to say, I don't think I'm too far off, and I don't think I'm too far away from what you said. Now I'm going to go back again and say, I know I've read some of that in Darity's work. Darity wants to talk about the Federal Reserve, and he speaks of the Federal Reserve and its independence, and that is true. I think I know that's true, at least on paper. We're going to have to get more people who puts political pressure and be able to explain what you just explained, Logic. Frankly, most of us don't know what you just explained. And so I do agree with that. But let me go back and say that I want to try to make clear what I'm saying. And that is the United States government. You said we are the only one with our currency. That is true. But I will say, as I have said, the United States government does not want American descendants of slavery to get reparations. And they will do almost anything they can to keep us from getting it, because I don't know who said it. It may have been Brother Naheem that said it. Because once we do it, everybody else around the world is going to try to do it. And so there's going to be a major shift in economic policy and power. That's what I was trying to say the whole time I've been on this program tonight. And
Indeed.
And that's why I'm saying that ADOS is both, whether you want to be or not, because you're being successful, you're peeling back the onion of myth, misinformation. Somebody said ignorance, and we say ignorance is not really that bad. If you just, because if you don't know, you don't know. But once you start getting as close as you're getting, you're going to be a target, because you being smart enough to create your own narrative, creating your own path, creating your own successes. You just got to be ready for what's ahead, and we have to be freedom fighters, and we have to stay the course. So no, there's nothing that you said that I don't know. Maybe I didn't say it like you said it, but I'm aware of it, and I want us to be successful. So it's your program. You got to correct me, when I say things is not accurate. I understand all that, and I respect that.
And that goes vice versa as well. We're here learning as well as teaching. But we're past our 2-hour mark.
Yeah, man.
If anybody had anything else that they wanted to say and ask the brother, now is the time. I want to give a shout out to Dr. Sandy Darity. He made a comment that I do want to read.
Read that.
That was powerful. Dr. Darity says, actually, I don't like the Fed's independence. The Fed is subordinate to congressional authority, and the Congress can direct the Fed to support financing reparations if so desired. So it goes back to we need the votes.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
What we've said on this show every time we get the opportunity. We have a congressional focus. We understand the importance of Congress and its role in reparations. So we have to promote and foster a real congressional focus, and what I'm meaning the actual seats in the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. And we have to turn and fill those seats with reparationists. We have to build a pro-reparationist Congress if we want this thing to work. So that's the job. Unfortunately, I have to go. I have to close out. I appreciate you for coming and answering the call. I have a prior engagement. I appreciate both of the guests we had on tonight for taking their time out. Everybody that's in the chat, I appreciate y'all. Excellent program tonight. I hope everybody learned something. And peace. Government is the game. Politics is how it's played, man. We got to get in the game, y'all. And peace and love. I'm out.
All right, brother. So with Josh, you was about to say something?
No. I'm just gonna say, it's been a great program. I really enjoyed Jecorey coming on and dropping his knowledge, especially for the future reparationists and people that are looking to be the power and become, the next office holders in their local place, or whether it be somebody that wants to aspire to higher office. And I also appreciate Professor Evans for hopping on. I just want to say respect to you, because I think maybe people, when you're on a large panel, maybe people don't really get a chance to understand what you're saying. You don't get a chance to elaborate and let the people see. But I appreciate you coming on here and saying, really spilling your mind and telling people how you feel and your perspective. And I think when people can see that your intentions are genuine, we can work for. We have an alignment of intentions, then we can work with whatever differences we may have as far as the direction we wish to go. So I want to say I appreciate you for coming on. I didn't even know of you before that panel, and I appreciate you fighting throughout the years, and I appreciate you still being in the fight today. So that's all I really wanted to say to you, brother. Much respect.
Much love, brother. I appreciate that, and I love all of you, and I'm proud of you. I can't tell you how proud I am of you, and I feel better. I mean, we see that, like Marley say, don't give up the fight.
That's right.
Stand up for your rights, and that's what you're doing, and we're going to win.
That's right.
We're going to win because it's justice.
That's right.
It's justice.
And some of us say it. Allah is leading on, and victory is sure. That's the way some of us say that.
Some of us say it that way.
I like that.
Allah is leading on, and victory is sure.
Yeah, that's what my cousin would say. That's what my cousin would say to me.
Oh yeah,
Salim movement.
Okay, okay.
He's a bad imam from Detroit.
Everything that Josh just said, man, I really appreciate you coming on and giving us your thoughts on everything, man. I appreciate and respect it. Great deal.
Same here, brother. Same here.
Bless you, brothers. And
so I want to.
Dialogue's important.
That's right. That's right.
That's all it's about. And I'm
That's
mature
right.
enough and patient enough, because when Brother Logic contacted me, I said, yeah, you know, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to make sure I'm, you know, I come and do this. Because I have respect for ADOS. I wouldn't have been on the first call if I didn't, right? I see what's going, I see it, I know, I can see it. I can see it. And it won't be long.
Excellent.
Definitely. So we're
All
gonna
right,
get
brothers.
up out of here, and
Love you.
I'm a same here, brother. Love you as well. I'm gonna end with our platform's motto, and that is: don't just fight the power, become the power, and then and only then will you have the power to make a change. And with that, I say peace.
Right on.